Well, here we are. It's Friday. Let's see, what's the date? Oh, the 15th of July. A month's half over. We're getting sort of into the depth of summer. It's beautiful here in Cape Ann today. It's 75 degrees, dry, much better than it was a few days ago. Absolutely beautiful. And we're going to talk today about, as we always do every week, we're going to talk about some auction results, what's going on out there. Right now, it's a little bit quiet over in Europe. There are very few auctions going on because it's summer, and in the summer they don't do auctions very much. July is very quiet. August is very quiet because a lot of Europe goes on vacation for the month. Lucky them. And so as a result, over on the global pages, for example, on the European pages outside of the U.S., there are, I don't know, there's probably maybe 6 auctions on there right now. That's about it. The Netherlands quiet. There's a couple of sales finishing up. There's a sale at Christie's that's finishing up soon in London, and that's about it for the summer. And they'll all be back in September. There'll be a lot of sales this fall, I suspect. The global economy and things a little bit shaky, but what we're seeing some fairly big impacts on prices and unevenness in sales, depending on where you're looking. You'll probably notice if you look at auction results on Live Auctioneers or Invaluable or someplace where they have a broad range of things, you'll find very similar objects in one sale selling for maybe $1,000 or $1,500, and another sale, a virtually identical piece, goes for $600, $500, $400. And that is something we've been seeing increasingly because I think there's a little uncertainty going on right now because things are the way they are, not only in the United States, but in Europe. They're dealing with inflation problems and fuel problems, and there's so much going on. It's just, and all of it impacts money, and when money is impacted, economies are impacted. And right now, if you're in a position to collect, now is the time to jump in because I think you're going to find yourself some great buys. There's some good opportunities coming up. And we're going to go through some of them, all right? And if you like our videos, subscribe, give us a thumbs up. Do leave comments. I saw some interesting comments last week. A lot of you liked the auction, the video we did on fakes, on how to handle dishonest auctioneers and so forth. I think it was might have been helpful, and we're working on another video that'll come out probably Tuesday. I hope you like it. It is a fairly long one, and it is about the marriage of Charles II to the Catherine of Braganza, who was the daughter of the King of Portugal, and how it impacted England in unbelievable ways, and the long-lasting effects of what that wedding did as far as taste and appreciation for things from Asia, and how it all came to be. It's a pretty interesting story. It's actually quite fascinating, and it's actually a topic I used to, when I was doing auctions, I'd get asked to speak at historic societies sometimes, and it was one of the topics they'd like to hear about because it had a ripple effect on American furniture, on English furniture, on interiors, decor, how things were what was appreciated, and of course the spice and tea trade and all of that. And it's a very interesting history, and nobody talks about it very much. And we're going to talk about it because it's quite a thing. All right, but what's been going on? Let's take a look here. On the global pages, we're going to talk about some of the auction results that took place this week. There were some very good buys. This was one of them. This was a sale. This was at Henman's in Illinois, in Chicago. And this struck me funny because they photographed these upside down. And this was the second time I've seen these kinds of vases displayed upside down. There's a museum here in Cape Ann that had a pair of porcelain vases, goo-form vases like this. And they, for years, had them upside down. They called them offering stands because the bottoms were on the tops, and they just assumed that those were something you were supposed to put things on. And these are upside down, and they're very nice. They misdated them as 20th century. I don't think they're 20th century from what I'm seeing. I think these were older than that. I think these were late Qing examples of copper on enamel. I thought they were very, very nice, very beautiful, good quality, really fine quality. They don't look Republic period or 20th century to me. I think they weren't sure how to date them, and I think they went very reasonably, $700 for the pair. They were almost 12 inches tall, good looking, and again, this is one of those things where I think there's some good buys. But I think also you're going to see fewer and fewer Chinese buyers, foreign buyers coming in from China and Hong Kong bidding these days with everything that's going on. So with those wallets not participating as much, I think you're going to see increasingly better and better deals around for the time being. The other thing, you have things like this. This was the Bonham sale in, what was it? This was in London, I guess it was. No, this was one that was out in California. A bunch of mugs sold for $420. Now, a couple of them had a little bit of damage to them. And one of them, this one is 20th century. It's a transfer decorated piece. But the rest of them are all late 18th century. And somebody picked up the lot for $420 against an $800 to $1,200 estimate. That's the kind of thing I'm talking about. And then this, a Kangxi period porcelain pot, beautiful gilt enameling. It almost looks like a chamber pot, doesn't it? And maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I'm not sure. But the workmanship on it was absolutely terrific. Beautiful condition. I couldn't see anything wrong with it. Maybe one of you found out there was something wrong with it. I couldn't see any. Very, very good quality, and it went for just $375, well below its low estimate. And this was at Eddie's Auctions in New York, and they do sales, several Asian sales a year. And this was something else that was at Heritage. It sold for $2, and this is an interesting picture if you're a ceramics fan. I'm not. It's not a great piece of art. It's not a fabulous piece of pith work. It's on pith, but what it is it's depicting a porcelain repairer. And I included it in the global member pages because I think for those of you that like ceramics, it's interesting to see a little bit more. And this is a fellow with his repair kit. Somebody's come along and he's got some bowls that need repairing, and this is how they would put staples in to repair them. And you have this long bow-like device and a little drill bit here, and they would very gently, he'd hold the bowl between his knees, as you're seeing, and he has all of his tools and staples in these cabinets that he carries, and they charge by the staple. So if you had to have a piece repaired, the guy would tell you how many staples at minimum it would take to fix it, and how many he would recommend. There was sort of a negotiation about how many staples you were going to pay for, but here it is, and he runs this bow back and forth like the things you learned how to light fires in Scouts with a bow and a post, and you run it back and forth and get it hot. Well, here they use a drill. It has a little drill bit. It drills holes in the porcelain, and they tap in very, very gently. They place the staples in, crimp them in place, and you have a young fellow here waiting to have his porcelains repaired. And it's just an interesting picture. It's just a very interesting picture. It was 7 by 9 inches. Somebody bought it for $2. All right, it's probably going to cost $20 to $30 to get it shipped or something, or $40, but it's worth it. And with the lot was this. It was an old colored engraving of sort of a Chinese figural landscape scene. It looks like it's either Canton or Hong Kong or something. And here you have a terrace view of some mandarins looking out, so forth. And that was included with it. It was a 2-picture lot, and I think that was a great buy for somebody. All right, and then let's see what else is going on here. This was a nice piece of Japanese pottery that was probably a piece of Seto from what I'm seeing. Somebody called it Japanese and the Chinese geese style. Who said this? Case Antiques. They could do good auctions, but they're a little off on this. But at any rate, what was really interesting about this was that it still had an old label from the Yamanaka company on the bottom. And you don't see that label much. And they did have stores, as many of you know the story of Yamanaka. They had stores in New York, Boston, and I think Chicago. Yes, Chicago. The Chicago store was run by the man who became a huge dealer and supplied a lot of stuff to some of the major collectors in the Midwest. And this thing was in the sale. It was just a really nice piece of pottery. and it went for $550. But interesting history of where it came from, and it was a good buy for the Japanese pottery buyer out there. And then moseying on over to here, this was one of the bargains of the month. This was at Freeman's. This was an absolutely great deal. It was a Canton export basin on stand. Here's the stand. The stand was added later, but beautifully made. Probably it looks like it's English by the turnings and so forth. Made of mahogany. Is this 27-inch wide? This wasn't a small dish. This was 27 inches wide. This was a big, heavy piece of porcelain, beautifufully decorated. It wasn't that many years ago that things like this, these things were selling. There's the drain for it right there, the drain hole in the bottom. That's not damaged. That hole was put there when it was made. You put a cork in it and you fill it up and you soak your feet in it or wash the baby in it or something. But beautiful quality decoration. Absolutely fabulous. Great value. Somebody bought this for $400. Love it. And then over here to this was at Freeman's again. Very, very nice kidney-shaped famille rose dish, circa mid-18th century, of two Europeans. This was a wonderful piece of porcelain. And he's walking over. I love this. He's walking over. The European is holding up a mirror for his wife or girlfriend here, and she's looking at herself in the mirror. And paintings like this with people looking into mirrors are interesting. I think they're very interesting. I actually have in my own house a portrait of it came from the Fogg Museum. It was a deaccession they did years ago, and it was a Japanese lady looking into a hanging mirror. And it was a very interesting thing watching her in her reflection. A couple of people have asked about Skinner in Boston. Skinner's, and I should have mentioned this a couple of months ago. Skinner's was bought by Bonhams back in, I think in March. They've changed hands and are now part of the, Bonhams has been sort of going on a buying spree around the world, buying up mid-range auction houses, and they've bought a number of them. And Skinner's is now part of the Bonhams family, and hopefully Bonhams will bring in some people and do something to get their Chinese department squared, their Asian art department squared away, so that their catalogs are more reliable. Because right now they're almost worthless, to be perfectly honest. And they get good things. Skinner's has had great Chinese things over the years, but they just were never willing to invest in having anybody that really knew it well enough to run the department. So they've gone through a succession of people. They had one fellow there, Jim, who was now out on his own, who was pretty good. He paid attention to what was happening, and it was nice to deal with and all that. But he left to go out on his own, and I think it was because they just weren't paying him well enough. And hopefully, maybe Bonhams will bump the pay scales and bring in some more knowledgeable people than what they've got now. I'm not trying to be brutally critical, but boy. Some of their sales are embarrassments. And then over to this. This was something I meant to mention last week, and I missed it. Was this very interesting? This was done at Freeman's also. A very nice iron brown, iron red Tran period, Tran Dynasty, 12th to 14th century Vietnamese Maping. These are very rare. They don't turn up very often. They're very hard to price. I think Ben at Freeman's just didn't know what to put on it, because you go and look up one and you're not going to find prices for them anywhere because they're so rare. So he put $2,000 to $3,000 on it. And I think he knew it was going to bring more, but you give it all that told everybody was that there's not much of a reserve on it. And this ended up selling for $45,000 because they're so rare. They're very, very rare. This is the same, sort of at the same period as the late Sung through the Yuan dynasty, if you're thinking in terms of when this was, if it was in China, at the same period. Beautiful piece of pottery. It wasn't terribly big. It was, it was pretty good size. It was 17 inches, I should say. That's pretty big, yeah. And $45,000 on a $1,500 to $2,000 estimate. And then this, a pair of these chicken skin ground Famille Rose export vases from the 18th century. These were made around 1770. This was at Thomaston Place. This was that auction up in Maine I told you about. They were having a pretty good looking sale last week. And it was happening last Friday, I think, when we were doing the video. As a matter of fact, anyway, this was a nice looking pair of beaker vases, and sold very reasonably, $650 on a $1,200 to $1,500 estimate. One of the things to know about places like Thomaston, they put estimates on there, but it's not always an indicator of what their reserves are. So you end up with the possibility of getting some very good buys. I've bought from them over the years. They're nice to deal with up there in Maine. They're the sort of country people, plain spoken. It is what it is. They're helpful. So keep that in the back pocket, because they're going to be doing, since James Julia shut down a number of years ago. He was I think he was probably the biggest auctioneer in Maine. He retired because his wife was ill, and the company was sold to a company in Pennsylvania, and they sort of botched the place up and haven't done much since. So Thomaston Place is now probably the place to go in Maine if you're looking into auctions. All right, and then on to this. This was at Case, I think it was. Case Antiques had this. We talked about them last week, or 2 weeks ago when the auction first was posted on the global pages. Was this very, very interesting page of a pair of planters with these green bases, late Qing dynasty, but unbelievably nice quality, beautiful quality. I hope one of you bought them and you're going to put flowers in them. I thought these were great. I thought the estimate was very, very low for how beautiful these are and how good the quality is on them. And they ended up selling for $4,600 against a $1,400 to $1,800 estimate, because they were just so nice. They were just beautiful. And that's the kind of thing that you if you get them, put a nice pair of plants in them, enjoy them, put them in your house. And then this was also at Case Antiques. This was really nice. They had them listed as 18th century. This doesn't look 18th century to me. A beautiful charger with this the rocky pattern and the pagoda in the center. There's the back of it. My feeling is this is a late Ming example, and it ended up selling very reasonably for $700, and it was 13 inches in diameter, and this is top quality porcelain work. Really, really fine. You notice that on this one, instead of just having the sort of standard wave border or something, the artist took about to put a full landscape in, panoramic landscape running around the outside, and then you have these these craggy rock formations that are so popular in Chinese art, with these nice tall pagodas coming up through them. Pagoda pattern. You see this pattern fairly often on Swato wares, but this is Jiajing or Wan Li period, I think, and but just absolutely great. And somebody picked them up for $700. Picked that plate up for $700. And over to this. I think this was also a very, very good buy for somebody. This was at Case as well. No, Abington. Oh, Abington in Fort Lauderdale had this. That's right. Was this wonderful a copper Beijing enamel on copper tea caddy, tea box. So they didn't list it as tea box. I think they just called it a box, but it's a tea box. And the reason this was so good, one, it's 18th century, and it's in beautiful condition. There's the bottom of it. There's the top of it with the European scenes. Clearly an export piece. Very, very finely worked. The top was in good shape, and there you are. All right, and hold on a second. I'm going to kill that phone. Okay, I'm back. Spam call. What a shock, huh? Anyway, robocalls. They come all the time, and I hardly ever use my cell phone. It's annoying. All right, anyway, this was a great piece of Beijing enamel. It really was. And I think the $3,500 price was very reasonable for what that is. And it's a good sized box, too. It was 9 by 6 by 4. So it was a decent sized box in good condition. The corners weren't banged or bent, damaged, nothing. Absolutely fine. and pretty rare. And if you think about it, you think about this box. When was the last time you saw one like it? So there you are. And then on to this, the robe. We talked about this a week ago or 2 weeks ago. I remember talking about it because I thought it was very much underestimated. Beautiful quality, first half of the 19th century. And you see this type of robe with this skirt with the roundels and the dragons on it fairly often in good paintings, in imperial paintings of court scenes and so forth. This is the kind of robe that would have been worn, very nice, old, probably Taijing period. And it ended up, I think I said it last week, maybe it was going to bring 10 or 15,000. Ended up doing better. It ended up selling for $19,000. Not a total surprise. The quality was good, and it's a rare form, and there you go. And this was at Gordon Fine Art in New Jersey. So you never know where these things are going to turn up, and so forth. All right, and then over to this. This is a jar that I wanted to mention for the Japanese buyers out there. It's coming up. It closes in 3 days, or in 4 days actually, at Christie's in the UK. If you're over there, this is a big jar. It's Edo period, 20 inches tall. But very unusual decoration, gutsy, bold, big flowers, big clouds. Everything is, very heavily done, and the decoration on it looks to be in absolutely outstanding condition. Absolutely great. I think I'm not sure if the finial is original or something on there, but maybe it is. Maybe it's just an oddball finial. Yeah, it is. It's just an oddball finial that they used. At any rate, it's estimated at 1,500 to 2,500 pounds. And if you're in the UK and you buy Japanese porcelain, you want to check this sale out. It's on the global pages. When's this sale? It's in 3 days. So there you go. All right, and then I think this is one other thing that's coming up over in the UK in a couple of days. I wanted to mention it. Is a very, very nice pair of Mandarin vases. Famille rose with Mandarin scenes on them. Is a more accurate description, I guess. With these big pink handles, 25 inches tall, with these nice gilt bronze stands under them. Don't overlook the stands. They're beautiful. European stands, probably English. Estimated at 4,000 to 6,000 pounds. They should get there. They should bring maybe bring 5,000 to 8,000 by the time they're all in and done. And those are just a couple of things that are going on in Europe. But there isn't much more than that over there right now. It's pretty surprising. But it happens every year. Tijan and the Arts of Asia sales finish up in Paris, and that's sort of it until September. And that's if you remember, a few weeks ago we talked about the Arts of Asia sale. We mentioned the Tijan sale, and then poof, they're all gone. They're finished, and they'll be back in about 6 weeks. All right, let's see here. What happened over on eBay this week? Here you had here's the kind of thing where somebody probably should have left some bids. This was a very nice Amari Kangxi period tureen with cover with these wafer handles on the ends. Looks to be in nice condition. $315. All right, and then moseying along over to here. This was Joni's up in Canada had these, a pair of Mandarin circa 1780 salts, which are, salts are, as people are out there that collect salts. These were sort of nice ones, and they looked to be in good shape, and they ended up selling for $485. All right, now what over here? Oh, this. The hookah base. I'm pretty sure that's what it is. They didn't advertise it as that, but that sure looks like a hookah base to me. In this form, this mallet form, Kangxi period. I talked about it last week because I thought the decoration on it was so nice. Here's the top of it. The body is nice pure white porcelain. Good looking foot rim on it. There's that, and they're showing it upside down for some reason. And it ended up doing really well at the end. It sold for $3,663. This was Migolari had this. It was a nice piece of porcelain. He's a good seller. So people trust him. They look at his things and they go, well, he's usually spot on with dating and so forth. And he is, in our experience. He's been very good. London dealer, and he's active. He's always got stuff up. And this was also one of his. It was a Kangxi Dragon Bowl. Very popular pattern. Very, very much pursued with the dragon floating on the waves, with the clouds, flaming clouds behind him, and so forth. And there's a mark on the bottom. But this was a nice bowl, nice bell-formed bowl, and it looked to be in pretty good condition. It had one little repair, and that was it. But a very desirable pattern, and ended up going for $2,711. Had it not had the little repair on it, it probably would have gone for upwards of $4,500, $4,000. So the price is good. These Dragon Balls in that pattern, remember that pattern, always do well in auction. The Chinese buyers love them, and so do a lot of Europeans. He also had this. This was a really nice piece of 18th century export with red-headed herons on it in famille rose enamels, Qinlong period, probably done around 1780 or 90, something like that. Nice looking decoration. It looked to be in pretty good shape from what I'm seeing. Yeah, it looks like it's in good condition. And somebody got I think a very nice buy on this. They bought it for $778. And this was a good-sized bowl. It was, I'll give you the exact dimensions here. It was 10 inches diameter. It wasn't a 6-inch bowl. It was good size and nicely decorated, and the decoration was intact. Always checked how intact the decoration is. Is the gilding all worn? Are the enamels rubbed down? That kind of thing, because those are the kinds of things that hamper value. But when the colors are still good and strong, the gilding is still in great shape, there are no cracks, you've got something worth considering. And that was a nice piece. And then these popped up just the other day when we were looking through getting things ready to go in. This is 1860 to 1960. It's a textile dealer out in California, in San Mateo. And over the years, they've had some interesting, they handle all kinds of textiles. They don't deal in just Chinese textiles, but they deal in vintage clothing and interesting. They seem to have pretty good taste. And they came across, they have this pair of Chinese rank badges, but in absolutely splendid condition, vibrant. These have been obviously in the collection of a textile collector, probably since the 20s or something, because they're absolutely pristine. They are in the same condition that they were in when they were made. And you don't see it very often. Strong color, strong cobalt, strong yellows, oranges. The peach colors haven't faded at all. No fading at all. These don't ever look like they've seen the light of day. In meticulous workmanship. These are nice 19th century badges. They looked them up. They said they're 7th rank men's badges. They're up to $4,150. I think they're going to do a good bit better before they're done. And there's another pair of them here somewhere. Did we miss them? Or maybe come up to them next. They've got 2 of them up. This is something that Josh Chamberlain has, Juice 1499. There was a tradition where in the 1920s and 30s in particular, where companies like Yamanaka and this company, which was Edward Farmer, who was in New York, would take bits of Chinese jades, porcelain, silver, and they'd work them into Western useful objects in the West, mainly desk sets, inkwells, inkstands, standishes, placemats, the same way Tiffany's was doing at the time. Tiffany would do these beautiful desk sets with pen holders and brush pots and inkwells and all this. And Edward Farmer did the same thing, and he was very much into that, just like Yamanaka was. And here you have a beautiful jade cylinder that's been given a jade top with a little, probably rose, a quartz elephant on top. Nice looking base. Great little object. And these are sort of timepieces from the 1930s or so. Excuse me. It's hay fever season, isn't it? Huh. Anyway, it's up to $665. I suspect it'll get up to around $1,500 to $2,000 because these are pretty rare. And it's how big is, how tall is this? It's probably about 6 inches, 5.7 inches. That's about right. I was going to say 6 inches as a guess. But nice quality, nice condition. And what's nice is that elephant's trunk hasn't been busted yet. Which is almost a miracle on these things, because these were used. People had them in their offices, on tables in their houses to store things in, and they got banged around quite a bit. All right, and then over to this. This is something also Josh has up, is this very nice, looks to be a Kangxi period double gourd, but square form vase, fairly rare form. For one of these, it is probably, 9 or so inches tall, 8.6 inches tall. Where will it end up? It should end up in the $1,000 to $1,500 range, somewhere up there. But it's a nice piece of porcelain, beautifully done with bootside decoration. It's got the fritting on the edges, as you can see, where they pop, which is pretty standard. And there's some Chinese script at the top, symbols at the top, but very nicely done. Sort of a rare form. And also this, if you're building your library, this is a chance. We always mention these when they come up for sale because they don't turn up all that often. A set of 3 books by John Ayres on the Topkapi Saray Museum in Istanbul. It's a wonderful set of books. They typically sell, these can bring anywhere from $700, $800 up to as high as $1,500 for a set. This is 3 volumes, and Regina Krall helped write it as well. There it is, beautifully illustrated. And these are the export wares that were brought out of China and sent to the Middle East, starting sort of in the Yuan dynasty into the Ming dynasty. These are trade route ceramics, and they were often given as tribute to the courts of the Middle East, in particular Turkey, which was a big trading partner for many years, centuries. And this is an illustrated compendium of those collections, of the history of those books, those porcelains, and it's a really interesting set of books. Really interesting. If you like books, you want to look into that. All right. If you're building a library, you have to have a library. You just have to. And these are 3 essential books right here in a set that you need. And then closing out, coming up in the next few days is this. This is Josh has this up. It's a really nice Suba, butterfly Suba with gold inlay. It's up to $257. I suspect it'll double or so by the end, but very nice quality. Beautiful that iron decoration with sort of a rustic quality. They're made that way. This isn't. If you're looking at these, it looks dinged up. They were made this way. This was the taste. Very rustic, very attractive, and he's got a whole bunch. They'll be on the newsletter page this week. There's a whole bunch of Subas that he picked up somewhere, and they're all unreserved, so they're going to go for what they go for. But there's some. If you're a Japanese Suba buyer, you like the art in them, they're worth looking at. All right. Oh, here's the other one. Here's the other couple of rank badges that are up. Here they are, and again, they appear to be virtually untouched. Absolutely pristine condition. This is that 1860 to 1960 seller. These are up to $9,300 already. They have 4 days to go. But the quality of the silk is just excellent. Just absolutely excellent. The drawing is good. There's no fading. I don't see any pulls. Nothing. They look like they've just been kept flat in a nice dark drawer for a very, very long time. And about as close to factory fresh as you can get. And these are 19th century rank badges. Just absolutely beautiful. And there's the other one. We talked about that one already. And this, the other set of books by W.G. Gouland. I have this set, actually. I've had it for years. I think mine's the first edition. I don't think that maybe they didn't do 2 editions, but this is no, this is the 5th edition. Okay, they did do them, but at any rate, it's a great book. If you want to, if you're interested in the history of collecting and what people thought and what people looked at, these books were written back in the 1920s. And there's some interesting anecdotal stories in here, and they talk about things. And some of the stuff they talk about still holds true today, and some of it you'll read it and instantly recognize, oh yeah, well they've discovered that kiln, and that's not where they were made, or that's not the true story. But they are interesting books, and it gives you some insight into how few books there were in English back in those days about Chinese art. A lot of the books that were published and printed were vanity presses done by collectors who wanted their own collections illustrated and printed and shared in books. They like to it's like a personal catalog. So they might print up only 500 or at the most maybe 1,000 copies. Usually it was 500 to 750. and they would pass them around among their friends, gift them to museums and so forth. And there were a lot of the prominent collectors of the day did this. And Galland was a scholar, and this particular set. Here it is. Was published in 1928 and 29. I think the original set was done before that, around 1918 or 1920. But anyway, it's a good book, and it's a buy it now for $75. I think that's a great buy. I think that you'll get it if you read it. You'll enjoy it. It'll be worth it. And there's some very interesting illustrations in there, and you get to see what collectors were looking for back in that time period. What were collectors buying? And a lot of it is going to surprise you because it's not the things that people are buying today. There was huge shifts in taste, huge shifts over the century, over the decades, and what was considered to be the most desirable pieces. Some pieces are still the most desirable, absolutely true. But there are also types today that were then, for dollars, worth huge amounts. Huge amounts. There was the famous J.P. Morgan, I think, bought a Kangxi cracked ice jar in 1920 or 1915 or something. The story was, and I think he paid $20,000 for the thing. And today that jar is probably worth about $10,000. But he paid $20,000 in 1920, which was a vast fortune. That's like paying $300,000 today, $400,000. It was a massive amount of money at the time, and that's I think he bought it from the Dravine brothers, and because at the time that's what everybody thought were the rarest pieces, were the cracked ice jars. So there you are. All right, and that's about it for the week. Thanks for watching, and have a great weekend. Enjoy the summer, of course. Go to the beach or wherever you're going to go. Do things. Have a cookout, and leave a comment here. Subscribe if you haven't already. Visit us at Bidamount.com. And thanks so much for watching. We always appreciate it. And happy hunting out there. Happy hunting. Okay. Bye-bye.